our partners nearby. $10 million for highest ranked family income index. We always qualify, at least one of our schools always qualifies under that family income index. So we should be getting an allocation this year. 10 million for educator evaluation, licensure advancement progress, and including advancement through micro-credentials. HR should be very happy about this one. $1 million for safety and statewide deployment of mobile panic buttons. Where that came from, I don't know. $500,000 for outdoor classrooms, 15 million out of school time learning, summer enrichment, and high dose tutoring. So lots of opportunity to augment the in-school days and hours that our students are already spending. $5 million to train secondary education educators in evidence-based reading instruction, 10 million to maintain the unit value of $6,241. I anticipate that will go up, but just to make sure it's going to stay at least where it is, they added the $10 million, which I thought was a smart move. $6 million for special needs education initiatives, $5 million for summer internships, $20 million for educator clinical practice programs, and $5 million for stipends and pay differentials to fill hard to staff special education positions. That's a real win for the district here as well. Another special appropriations, $14 million for early literacy programs, reading support, $5 million for school leader professional development, $5 million for teacher professional development. And if you don't understand, I think it's important to appreciate the purpose of professional development for school leaders. Often, we, in this district, and what I've seen, we promote from within. And often it requires additional training and professional development to nurture and coach and develop our future leaders long after Mr. Widener is here and I'm here and others, so that they can take over and do a really good job of what they're leading the school. $500,000 for National Board Certification Assistance, $1.25 million for advanced placement. Here's some education impacts that I think are important. So SB 137 amends the minimum training requirements for all board members. The governor signed this on the 1st of March, so it is now law and a requirement. PED will collect and post information about the hours of training the board members have completed. Board meetings are going to be webcasted like they are now and have to be posted on the school district website for a minimum of 3 years. A local school board may not terminate a superintendent without cause within 60 days of convening a newly elected school board, and campaigning contributions now have to be reported at $1,000 versus $500. Bills that didn't pass were a class size reduction, school mental health counselors, additional CTE funding, financial literacy requirements, the State Board of Education, which would have removed the powers from the PED, paid family medical leave, which would have been a very, very expensive proposition for the school district, school safety measures, and capital outlay changes. That's the official presentation. I will tell you that one of the things that we need to be concerned about moving forward is that along with the 3% increase, NMSIA, the New Mexico State Public Schools Insurance Authority, is voting on Thursday about their rates. And so far, what we've heard are double-digit increases. And over 5 years, over the next 5 years, a total of 50% increase in medical health premium for all school employees. And 50% is a whopper of a number. And we did some modeling. Can I talk about this for a minute, Mr. Wagner? We did some modeling about the impact of what the increase. So we took the 3% increase and took various roles in our community, in our school district, and put them at 3%. What did they earn? What was their raise? And then took their current premiums that they're paying and multiplied them by one model of over 15%, which is one of the things they're talking about, and decided to look at what impact that would have on these individuals' raises. In one instance, one group, they would actually lose $10 a pay period, or a year rather. They would actually lose money. In others, they would eat up 85% of that raise in this healthcare premium. So it's something that we're very concerned about, something that we want to take a look at for the next school year. The other thing too is those in the lower income brackets also are heavily dependent on state-funded programs such as Medicaid. The raise will, for some people, kick them out of eligibility for that Medicaid, which then they have to buy the health insurance from the district or from the state, which it will be a lose-lose situation. So we're very concerned about that. We're looking at ways that we can sort of offset or mitigate that issue. We'll come back to you before we come to present what we want to do for negotiations. I stand for any questions you might have.
I'll throw out a disclaimer, just so you know, even as the legislature says, you know, $10 million here, $5 million, we just get a piece of that pie, and it's a small piece of that pie, but
A piece nonetheless.
it's good that they are allocating those funds.
Board members, any questions for Mr. Maldonado?
No.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maldonado. Appreciate that update. Mr. Widener.
At this time, Dr. Martin is back. He's got some data. We met with our principals last week. We're meeting with them again tomorrow. We had a presentation. We showed them the physics in a box curriculum. They were able to explore, to ask questions, to investigate what the boxes and the kits looked like. And so Dr. Martin is going to present the physics in a box.
Madam President, members of the board, Mr. Superintendent. So like what Mr. Widener said, we met with our principals on the 21st. We invited Gary Tripp from Physics in a Box to do the presentation. He made a pretty lengthy presentation in front of our principals. And I apologize that it's not part of your packet because I had to wait for last minute voters. And the result, as you can see, the majority of them are in favor of purchasing the Physics in a Box. Now, there's a few, they had a few questions and clarifications because they thought they'll only get 1 or 2 boxes because we said a box can be used by 2 students grouped together to perform experiments. So they had the misconception of them just getting 1 or 2 and not enough for an entire class. But we intended to get a set, like a classroom set. So like a set of 5 boxes, you'll be able to accommodate a class, students working in groups. So, and another question they had, another concern they had was capacity to actually use the boxes and teach the course and maybe teach physics to the students. But we did intend for Physics in a Box to be something for them to create a new class, a physics class that is, but for them to be able to use the tool to supplement whatever they're learning in math or whatever they're learning in their other like physical science. They can use the box to supplement whatever they're teaching there. Plus, we do have an USTA program, an after school program that allows them to use that equipment as well. And as you can see in the handout I gave to you, many of our principals think that it's something that their students will benefit from. Hands-on experience, as we all know, but anyway, is good for students, and them seeing actual performing actual experiments and seeing things in actuality, makes them understand concepts better. So that's my report, and I stand for any questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Martin.
You're
Board
welcome.
members, do you have any questions?
Well, I'm trying to look through my binder. It's this, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And, so there's only 14 people who filled this out.
Principals. Sir.
Principals.
How have we, what has been the process? Madam President, I'd like to ask him a question. few
Of
questions.
course.
Or you, because you've been in the trenches in the past when it comes to curriculum and instructional materials. How have we, what has been the process before when we were adopting materials, instructional materials? How do we go about doing that? And for instance, reading materials or social studies materials or math materials, what has been the process that we used when we did those things in years gone by?
The materials that are up for adoption, and actually the teachers are given a list. It's also available on the PED website.
Okay,
We're actually doing that right now for the CTE, health, PE, and computer science adoption. The teachers are invited to participate in a virtual session given by PED. Pretty much the teachers are given a voice in whatever books that are adopted by the district using adoption monies. Because they're supposed to not adopt outside of what PED has vetted and approved for adoption.
how does that voice, how do they voice their views or judgments about the instructional materials? How do they do that?
So through we did that through the principals and instructional coaches. We informed principals that what do you call this, the events on adoption that are happening. All information are forwarded to them, and we told them to forward those information to their CTE teachers, PE teachers, and encourage them to join, so they're well informed of materials that are up for adoption and approved by the PED for adoption.
Have you ever been involved with the math portions of it in years gone by?
This is my first adoption.
I mean, as a teacher.
As a teacher, I actually don't remember
Yeah,
being part of it.
this is what I remember, is that whenever we were to provide new instructional materials for the school, and usually it's a sizable amount of money. Say it's adoption for reading or English, things of the social studies. So, and as he said, we had, the state has the process and guidelines and how to do that. And so there's only certain vendors who have been approved, okay? And so what I think was important in those processes is that the teachers got a chance to review the materials. Matter of fact, the materials used to be here on display in the previous years. So that meant that the teachers were actually involved with them, looking at them. And I don't know how it's transpired since I've left since I've left being a employee. But if I recall right, the teachers would be responsible for reviewing the materials, discussing the materials, making some choices, and ultimately that filters up from the teachers and so forth, so that they got a chance to look at that. Then we made our costing of what it was. And sometimes we could not order everything because they would add supplemental enrichment materials in addition to the basics, you know. So the teachers and the principals had to say, okay, we can't get everything, but let's get what we can. So that's how that proceeded. And they made judgments as to whether or not they preferred one or over the other. Does that seem to be, and I'm sure, Lisa, you've gone through that too. And so that was the process we used at that time. And that was important, because if we didn't do that, the teachers would be unhappy if they had to be told they're going to use a certain set of materials. And it is their best shot at trying to make a judgment. Because even after we've done those things, it always didn't quite always work out, as we know. Sometimes after about a year or two of using materials, we'd find things that are not as good as we thought it would be. But nevertheless, the teachers were given that opportunity to do that. Okay, that's what I think is missing from this, is that we haven't had a chance to have the teachers take a look at this and give their professional opinion about how they would want to do that. But what I've seen is that we've given the principals a chance to look at it. But I think it's really important, if we're going to provide the teachers with materials that are going to be worthwhile, then the teachers need to be able to say that it's worthwhile. That's one of the concerns I have about that. Secondly, I don't see a implementation plan that says how we're going to do this, when we're going to do this, how we're going to train the teachers. And a lot of those kinds of details that typically are part of the process that we've undertaken in years gone by, where you would select and adopt a set of materials, and then you have to then determine, okay, how many students, how many classes, and then who gets what, and where is the training for the materials, and who is going to train them, and when are they going to train them? Those are the kind of things that I would think is important. I would be really concerned if we do this and we find that some of the teachers may not be as enthused. It's March. They have 3 months. You've got to figure out when you're going to insert the time for teachers to become familiar with this. It would be important to do those kinds of things so that one is assured that there's a optimum probability that they're going to have a positive view of the materials and how they're going to do that. You were mentioned, and so what I see here is just principals, because I don't know whether they ever talk with the teachers. See, that's the other thing. The teachers are the ones who have to do this. And so I see some of the some of the responses saying that they're not too familiar with it. They see some concerns, they may ask some questions.
Dr. Guy,
Yeah.
if I may interrupt
Sure.
for a moment. As a newly elected board member, I was very fortunate to sit through a presentation on this
Absolutely.
back in December and shared with you board members the slides of that presentation. I think one of the things that you're addressing is the teacher involvement in deciding going forward. But one of the things that was so great about what we learned in the presentation is how much support this company provides for the teachers by way of lesson plans already prepared that the teachers are able to follow, as well as and I don't remember, Mr. Widener, was it a website and a person that they could talk to specifically, Dr. Martin? It was a very interactive opportunity for help for the teachers. But also, I don't believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is supplemental, not an adoption of a whole new curriculum. This would be a supplemental material to the existing curriculum of science already in place. So this would be for materials to be used to supplement the science program and math. So my understanding is that it wouldn't be us having to adopt a whole new curriculum as much as it would be the board deciding or not deciding, obviously, to take action on purchasing this added material for what we already have in place. Is that
That's
correct?
correct. And as Dr. Martin mentioned, it's currently career technical education adoption, physical education,
Health
and health adoption.
and
And
computer
so,
science.
and Dr. Archambault, you're absolutely correct. Each year annually, we get an allocation from the state. They say, okay, this year we're adopting CTE, health and physical education. Here are the textbooks you can get. Here are the instructional materials you can get, the consumable books that you can get. And ebooks are now the big thing as well. And we still follow the same process. We don't pull the materials to central office anymore. They're delivered, since the pandemic, they are delivered to the teachers. So the CTE teachers at GHS now have the textbooks that they're vetting. The CTE teachers at Laguna Acoma High School, they're vetting their books and they do provide feedback. They do the rubrics. They select what we purchase as part of the adoption. The reason why Dr. Martin doesn't necessarily remember so much about the last math adoption, he was a math teacher. We adopted a math curriculum that was packets. It was Eureka Math. And the teachers, the math teachers were not involved in the math adoption. I'm sorry? It's 5 years ago.
The only document that explains, there is no document that explains what you just said. It's $154,000. There needs to be more than, to me, it's the administration's responsibility to develop a written plan that tells us all these things that she said, that you're saying. But I don't see that. So to me, for us to consider doing something of this magnitude, there needs to be a written implementation plan. That's, for that amount of money, we ought to have something besides oral statements of what we're going to do. And that's what I don't see. Really concerned about that we don't have anything more than we're going to do it in a certain way. But what would have been really helpful for the board is to say, this is how we're going to do it. And that's what I'm concerned about. And secondly is actually offering teachers an opportunity to explore this so that they can reinforce or ask questions regarding these things and fine tune the manner in which we're going to use this. And I probably can find in the past where we've done similar things like this. Even teachers will buy things and they will try to make use of them in their own schools. And but a lot of times we do things and they end up not being used after a while. What methods are we going to use to monitor the utilization of this? Whether or not how long does this last? How are you going to ensure that they are being effectively utilized? So do we have the mechanisms in place for a time frame, a schedule of when we're going to get these things in? When we're going to have the training for teachers? How are we going to measure, evaluate the utilization of these things? Those things are important. If we want to ensure that they succeed, then we need to create the infrastructure that shows that it's going to work. Am I against these things? I told you before, I found that the approach, hands-on, tactile approaches to teaching in science concepts is extremely vital. The things that the students did in science fair projects are hands-on things. And so they learn a lot more through that process. I'm primarily talking about how we roll this out. And there's no explanations about that. We don't have a plan. So that's what I think that's for $154,000, we need to have a plan.
Can I say something?
So
And all I'm saying is
Dr.
that you should
Martin,
have
Say
that.
something.
Dr. Martin, what would the plan be then, Mr. Widener? What would the plan then be rolling this out? Because my understanding is that the 150 some odd thousand would be getting several, of these boxes for each school in order for,
It should be written out.
But can I say something?
okay,
I mean, why would you waste time coming up with the plan if we don't vote on it? First, we've got to vote on it. Now they got to come up with the plan of how they're gonna, this is my thoughts. Is, there's an idea that came up. They don't have a plan yet, but why would I waste 24 hours coming up with a plan to give it to the board and then they say no? First, let's get the product, come up with, this is my idea. I'm not a teacher. I don't know what it takes to implement a program. I'm just a person that believes in, let's get it, come up with a plan, a scenario, or one school to do it, maybe one model school to do it. I don't know. Like I said, you're right. There's not a plan. But first of all, we got to get the stuff and then come up with a plan. That's how I work.
This is not our money, this is the public's money.
But it's the kids' education.
It's the public's
giving them
money,
the tool.
and we
It's
need
our
to,
money,
we
yes,
need to
it's our
know the
money.
public's money. We represent the public. The public must know that we are going to be thoughtful about how we're going to use these funds. And so I'm not sure, but this is how I feel about it, is that you need to have determined how are we going to do this? And it should have been fairly uncomplicated to do that. And that's my concern, is that I don't see spending money without having figured out how we're going to do it. And in the past, board member Jaramillo, what I had mentioned, the acquisition of other instructional materials, before we bought those things, we had the teachers look at those things. And so there was a process by which a review was made, an assessment was done to decide which of the materials were important. It's I guess, trying to,
Was there already a plan of how to implement it?
yeah, those things were laid out. Typically is that there was a process by which teachers would be involved, they'd create a schedule, they would create checklists of reviewing these things and saying, and even with science materials, they would do that. What I'm saying is that there needs to be a way in which if you have difficulty in implementing something, we should know beforehand. If it seems to be not that challenging, then we need to have it listed so that we know there has to be something more than just a sheet of paper saying $154,000.
So Dr. Martin can kind of tell you about our implementation plan. We're doing this as a soft opening. If we were to buy all of the sets that were available right now, it would cost us 500,000, Dr. Martin? And so we're kind of wanting to do it as a soft opening, buy them kits at a time. So this set would be $154,000 for the first set. And basically what this is basically like back in the old days, we had FOSS kits in our science labs, and so this brings physics instruction, hands-on physics. Our plan is to roll out this first wave of physics in a box with our professional development in August. And so
Their mechanics boxes, sturdy and will last for years. And they come with lessons and PD all the way. So weekly or as often as teachers want or need help in those lessons that are included in the box. So we're having professional development at the start of the school year, and we plan to roll it out then.
See that, Madam President, that's another bit of information that we didn't know. See, what you could have done is you could have included all of those things in a write-up that says this is the rollout approach. The other part you're saying is that there's a future commitment by the board for the purchase of $500,000, and I didn't know that. So I don't know how that plays out. It may be the most legitimate thing to do, but if I'm to look at the board packet and I see this, I should be able to have a sufficient explanation that says this warrants us doing this, because the rollout process and how we're gonna do it is there, and I can see it beforehand instead of trying to ask questions about it. And as I told you, I enjoy doing FOSS and doing, that's what we call SKIS too. It's just that we, as a board, are responsible for a wise expenditure of funds based upon sufficient information to say this is worth our while. And so the ideas are great. It's just that I think that we did not have the necessary consideration of, say, the pros and cons, and then saying all said and done, it appears like it's good. How are we going to do this? And doing it in stages or what? So there sounds like if we do this, there's a commitment to a larger expenditure of this. And are there any other instruction material needs that we're going to have down the road that are going to be part of our consideration in reading or math or CTE or some other things? So I'm just trying to have myself understand what it is we're doing. It's exciting, but your responsibility is to ensure that that excitement is operationalized through a feasibility. Is this going to work? And if it's going to work, let's do it in this fashion, and let's give the board the information so that they can see also all of that information. Thank you, Madam President.
I have
Thank
something
you.
to say real quick. It's your job. They elected you to do the research. You should have did your research on this stuff. You had 2 weeks to look into this.
I did.
I looked into it. I don't know if she did. But, they elected us to look at, this stuff's on the agenda. It's been on here for 2 weeks. You've got to do a little bit of your homework too, to see exactly what it's about, and I did.
Well, it's not about what it's about. It's about how we're going to roll it out.
All right, gentlemen. Very, very good discussion. I appreciate your input on wanting something tangible that you can look at that gives the information as you would like to see the district's plan for rolling this out, implementing it, should we decide to take action and make the taxpayers' money worthwhile for physics in a box. I also appreciate hearing your side of it coming from a different point of view in that we do need to, when it comes time for action items, to either say postpone again, or we vote this into action. That will occur at that time. Thank you, Dr. Martin. I appreciated very much your first presentation because you did answer some of these questions. You did clue us in on the thought process of starting out with the mechanics box initially, but then also there's the optics and other things that we can roll out further. I also appreciate you all meeting with the principals to start the discussion in the district, for being able to clue them in on an opportunity for us to get some additional science instruments and materials back in the classroom. That's something that has definitely been missing for a while in the district. So I appreciate both of your efforts in getting us more information and starting the process of including the principals and allowing them to talk with their staff about what's going on. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And without further ado, I believe it is time for the superintendent's report. Mr.
Yes,
Widener,
And I will say one thing there.
certainly.
The reason that one has come back is because we did postpone it until this meeting. So
Right.
so that's why that one is back.
You asked him to get with the principals, you didn't say the teachers.
Superintendent's report is,
Not fair. Well,
That was a little bit uncalled for. We don't need to cast aspersions right now.
superintendent's report is pretty brief. Just want to update you and invite you all to our April 2nd Professional Development Day. We will have a full day of professional development. We have worked very diligently and tirelessly to put together relevant professional development for our teachers. We have worked a lot with social emotional learning this year, trying to get our kids to feel supported, to come back, to be back at school and that normalcy of school. And that's a big push that we've worked on a lot with SEL. We're kind of at the point in the year now where our SEL teams are ready to run at each site. And so we have these meetings that are coming from our leaders, our teachers. You see that we recognize our SEL champions, our Edu champions. And so we'll be having a continuation of that. We'll be having workshops for every employee in the district. We're gonna have for the PE teachers, for the music teachers, for the CTE teachers, and we'll be feeding them lunches that day, and kind of just having a really good day of professional training and hopefully relevant training that will help them to wrap up the school year and prepare eagerly for the 24-25 school year. And so that's our plan. I do want to invite you all to be there. It'll be workshops and a day, but come and see some of the good things that are happening on April 2nd at Grants High School. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Widener at this time?
No.
Thank you very much, Mr. Widener. We will be moving on to, I believe, our action items. Our first action item is the consideration of approval of the purchase of 300 laptop docking stations laptop docking station configured computers for teachers from Sharp Business Systems in the amount of $399,261.71. We heard that information from Mr. Maldonado a short time ago. Superintendent Widener, is there a recommendation?
I do recommend that we approve this.
So Mr. Widener has recommended that we approve a motion to purchase 300 laptop docking station configured computers for teachers from Sharp Business Systems in the amount of $399,261.71. Is there a motion? It was on it should be in our agenda under action items. Item A, right there. So again, is there a motion to approve? All right, I will make a motion to approve the purchase of 300 laptop docking station configured computers for teachers from Sharp Business Systems in the amount of $399,261.71. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Ortiz. It has been moved by President Lee and seconded by Mr. Ortiz to approve the purchase of 300 laptop docking station configured computers for teachers from Sharp Business Systems in the amount of $399,261.71. Is there any further discussion at this time?
Madam President, we're familiar with this acquisition in the past, and we've already taken a position on these, so I think that I would be in support of this.
Thank you.
The only thing I gotta ask is, the ones that they're replacing, are they gone, are they missing, or?
The ones that are replacing are older desktops,
These are for the
and
teachers.
some are not even supported anymore. There's a variety, they've been a hodgepodge over the years. So this will be a complete refresh for all of the all of the teachers. It'll be state-of-the-art equipment, and we can deploy the ones that are useful elsewhere. Did that answer your question?
Nope.
All right, hearing no further discussion, we shall proceed to a roll call vote. Ms. Sandoval, please.
Dr. Shambo,
Yes.
Mr. Padamio,
Yes.
Mr. Ortiz,
Yes.
Mrs. Lee.
Aye. Motion carries. And now to item B under action items. Consideration of action regarding purchase of physics in a box curriculum and curricular purchases in the amount of $154,912.50. Superintendent Widener, is there a recommendation for approval as listed for the physics in a box curriculum and curricular purchases in the amount of $154,912.50?
So I recommend to approve. If we postpone, I can do more research as well. But I do recommend to approve.
Very good. So is there a motion to approve the purchase of physics in a box curriculum and curricular purchases in the amount of $154,912.50?
I make a motion to postpone, as Guy said, I'm not a teacher, like I said, I don't know the curriculums, I don't know how it goes. But if we need to postpone it and get a little bit more,
How do you feel?
That would be fine. We have no, we can,
I'm not against it. I just want to see us have
Plan.
the plan. That will give more confidence to the principals and teachers to that we're actually going to, you know.
we can
And
have
it's
it
not
on
gonna be,
display.
it does not have to be a 20-page. It could be 1 to 2 pages, just basically saying this is how we're gonna use it. And this is a precursor to future consideration that if the teachers find it successful,
Perfect.
then they will do that.
Perfect, wonderful. So it has been moved by Mr. Jaramillo to postpone purchase at this time
The next,
is
We have to postpone
to,
definitely.
yes, definitely,
And so let's select a date after April 2nd.
correct.
Yes.
So what is our next board meeting after that? The 9th?
No.
Is that spring break? April 2nd, spring break?
So we could,
16th.
may I ask a question, Madam President?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Martin,
Yes, sir.
you were sketching out a sort of a summer timeline or something.
Yes, sir.
Is that going to give you the time? Because did you think that you were going to launch it this spring, or were you thinking of?
we were wanting to launch in the fall, so that,
Then you should have enough time then to get the materials and then.
and we can put it in the teacher's hands.
So, thank you, Madam President.
Okay, so now I'm gonna try this again.
Okay,
It has been moved by Mr. Jaramillo to postpone definitely to April 16th board meeting and seconded by,
I second the motion to postpone to the April 16th meeting, the consideration of the adoption of the physics in a box.
fantastic. So it has been moved by Mr. Jaramillo and seconded by Dr. Archambault to postpone definitely this consideration of action regarding the purchase of physics in a box curriculum and curricular purchases, the listed amount, to April 16th. Is there any further discussion? No, hearing none. We shall proceed to a roll call vote. Ms. Sandoval.
Dr. Shambo,
Yes.
Mr. Jaramillo,
Yes.
Mr. Ortiz,
I'm gonna vote no.
and Mrs. Lee.
Aye. So the motion carries to postpone definitely. All right, the third action item is consideration of approval to accept the RBC Capital final bond pricing. Superintendent Widener, is there a recommendation for approval to accept the RBC Capital Fund bond pricing?
I recommend that we do approve to accept.
All
We
right.
have a presentation.
Uh,
Mr. May I interrupt? We have a presentation on this.
Oh, very good,
Yeah.
thank you.
We have Kaylee Weimer-Skirch with RBC Capital, our bond advisors, who shepherded us through the entire process of purchasing or selling the bonds to NMFA. One last thing in the process is to present the pricing for this and to review it with the board for their acceptance before we can actually finalize everything. So Kaylee, if you can take a few moments to brief the board on what they're looking at and what the next action is, that would be great.
Yep, absolutely. Again, thank you, Steve, for that introduction. My name is Kaylee Weimer-Skirch with RBC Capital Markets, your municipal advisor. Back in January, the board did approve to go forward with the sale of $10 million with the New Mexico Finance Authority. We did sell those bonds back on January 29th, and they did close on February 23rd. The true interest cost came in at 2.7%. Considering that the 10-year treasury is currently trading at about 4.1%, we're very pleased to receive a true interest cost of just 2.7%, far below the 10-year treasury. The maturities for these bonds range starting in 2024, with the final maturity being in 2037, but the bonds do become callable starting in 2034. With the true interest cost being only 2.7%, the total interest came in at $1.8 million. So in total, the total repayment for this $10 million loan is $11 million and $800,000. With that, I stand if there's any questions regarding the 2024 bond sale.
Board members, are there any questions for Kaylee? Mr. Maldonado.
I would like to point out also that given that wonderful interest rate that we have, we're also, remember, board, we're earning money on that capital through Morton Capital. So by the time that this comes through, most of, if not all of the interest rate will be covered by the interest that we're earning on the Morton Capital investments.
Thank you very much. Kaylee, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate your expertise in this. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Should you have any follow-up questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to me or any of my associates at any point. Thank you and have a great meeting.
Thank you very much. All right, so we will get back to consideration of approval to accept RBC final bond pricing.
Now I recommend that we approve to accept.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the RBC Capital final bond pricing?
I move to accept the RBC Capital Fund bond pricing as listed within the issue summary.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Ortiz. It has been moved by Dr. Archambault and seconded by Mr. Ortiz to approve the RBC Capital final bond pricing. Is there any discussion at this time? All right, hearing none, we shall proceed to a roll call vote. Ms. Sandoval, please.
Dr. Shambo?
Yes.
Mr. Adamio? Mr. Ortiz?
Yes.
Aye. Motion carries. And now we shall proceed to the consent agenda. At this time, we have the bills and expenditures report that we have been provided, board members, and the bars listed as 1, 2, 3, and 4. Superintendent Widener, is there a recommendation for approval of the consent agenda as listed, including the bills and expenditures report for February 2024 and the bars as listed?
I recommend that we approve the consent agenda items.
Wonderful. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed with bills and expenditures and bars?
I'll move to agenda tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Ortiz. And is there a second?
I second the motion to approve the consent agenda for bills, expenditures, and bars that's listed.
Wonderful. It has been moved by Board Member Ortiz and seconded by Board Member Archambault to approve the consent agenda as listed, including bills and expenditures report for February 2024 and the above listed bars. We shall proceed now to a roll call vote. Ms. Sandoval, please.
Dr. Shambo?
Yes.
Mr. Adamio?
Yes.
Mr. Ortiz? Mrs. Lee?
Aye. The motion carries. At this time, we will vote to move to executive session. It is a discussion of limited personnel matters pursuant to section 10-15-1H2 of the Open Meetings Act. Limited personnel matters regarding the summative evaluation of the superintendent shall take place in executive session and shall be shared with the superintendent. The superintendent shall be given time to respond to the evaluation results. Consistent with the Open Meetings Act and board authorities and regarding the Open Meetings Act, no action will be taken and only the items listed will be discussed. Is there a motion to move to executive session as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second the motion to go into the executive session for those purposes listed.
Wonderful. It has been moved by Mr. Jaramillo and seconded by Dr. Archambault to move to executive session as presented. Is there any further discussion? No, hearing none, we shall proceed to a roll call vote. Ms. Sandoval, please.
Dr. Archambault,
Yes?
Mr. Jaramillo,
Yes.
Mr. Ortiz,
Yes.
Mrs. Lee.
Motion carries. The board is gone to executive session at 7:32 PM. We shall break for about 5 to 10 minutes in order to get executive session. Zoom link for board members to be able to sign in, Mr. Ortiz, and join the link. We will reconvene the session in 10 minutes. 32. Oh, 7:42, yes. Absolutely. And maybe some cookies. There's some sweets in there. There's sweets.
Hot dogs.
There's sweets.
There was hot dogs.
Sweets. Sunday.
Are you going with the eighth graders?
Uh-huh,
Nice.
yeah.
Steve and Jackie are going to the NAFIS conference.
Oh, nice.
You know
In
how,
Washington,
yeah,
yeah,
you know how we went to Vegas? They're
right.
going to the national where they meet with like actual Congress.
All right,
legislators.
I'm gonna see if there is a motion to reconvene open session. May I have a motion to reconvene open
I'll have a
session?
motion to reconvene in open.
And is there a second?
I second the motion to reconvene into open session.
Wonderful. It has been moved by Mr. Jaramillo and seconded by Dr. Archambault to reconvene open session
And
as presented.
no,
Oh, thank you. And no action was taken and only the items listed were discussed during executive session. Thank you for helping me remember that part. So, Mrs. Sandoval, roll call, please.
Dr. Shambo,
yes.
Mr. Hadamio,
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Ortiz,
Yes.
Mrs. Lee.
Aye. So the motion carries. We reconvened open session at 8:54 PM. And I believe now we have announcements. Mr. Widener.
So we have a busy month coming up. Next week, the district will be closed for spring break. On March 29th, we'll be closed for the Good Friday holiday in conjunction with the Easter holiday. There will be the Professional Development Day on April 2nd that I presented in my superintendent's report. And again, I would love for all board members to be there that can be there and want to be there. April 4th through 9th, there will be a cohort of us traveling to the National School Board Association Conference. And then April 12th, we are looking at having a school board workshop to look at policies.
Wonderful. And we do not have any future agenda items listed at this time. And so,
President?
yes, sir.
Please put the budget development on the next agenda. Process, procedures, timeline. Steve knows the drill.
Yes.
He'll know what I'm referring to.
What you're looking for.
Yeah.
Wonderful. All right, Superintendent Widener, is there a recommendation for the meeting to be adjourned?
At this time, we have concluded our business, and so I recommend that we adjourn.
Wonderful. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Ortiz?
Ron, make a motion.
Run.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Yes. President Lee has seconded. So it has been moved by Mr. Ortiz and seconded by President Lee to adjourn the meeting. Ms. Sandoval, roll call, please.
Dr. Shambo,
Yes.
Mr. Hadamio,
Yes.
Mr. Ortiz,
Yes.
Mrs. Lee.
Aye. Motion carries. The board adjourned at 8:57 PM. Thank you and
The record.
good night.
Is it?
Hey, we're getting
Oh
there,
my
Ron.
God.
We're
Thank you.
getting there. Thank you, sir, for your time tonight.
What did I get into?
Was this Carol's?